Hello and welcome to Talking Points. I'm Dave Kelly, Director of Advanced Media Production at Cal State Long Beach. Today we're going to talk about everything you wanted to know about earthquakes, and I promise we'll get to the bottom of this subject, and I mean that both literally as well as figuratively. My guest today is Dr. Aaron Burkett. Dr. Burkett is a staff scientist with the U.S. Geological Survey. Aaron, thanks for joining us here on Talking Points.
Thank you for having me.
Well, as a staff scientist with the USGS, you certainly are at the epicenter of the most exciting seismology work here in the United States. What are some of the most rewarding aspects of your job working for the USGS, and what is the greatest challenge?
Well, rewarding-wise, on the science side, I really enjoy getting to understand how the Earth works, how it creates possible hazards like earthquakes. And then on the communication side, since right now I'm working more with communicating science to people, I find it really rewarding to be able to pass information to people who can use it. So whether it's people at home who can help make themselves safer and more aware of earthquakes, or emergency managers who can incorporate scientific information to make better plans.
Well, when you talk about awareness, that's a key point, because my next question is, whenever we have an earthquake awareness goes way up for obvious reasons. We have a peak in interest at that time, and then like everything else in life, as soon as we have a lull when nothing happens seismically for a while, people sort of put it out of their minds and it's out of mind, out of sight, and so on. How do we keep this concept of awareness on the front burner?
Well, I guess part of the idea is to not necessarily have to have it on the front burner all the time, but be prepared generally in daily life. So an example with fire, for instance, we tend to have fire retardant materials. We have systems in place to deal with fires, but you're not worried about it every day. We even have alarms that warn us. So the idea would be to get somewhere like that with earthquakes. So to have our buildings built so that they can withstand earthquakes, to have emergency supplies handy so that you could not be left without water, for instance, during an earthquake. So things like that, to keep it as a daily, or not necessarily, keep prepared constantly so that you don't have to worry about it daily. So when it happens, you could be ready.
Well, I promised the viewers we'd get to the bottom of this subject, and we're going to do that right now. We've prepared some very colorful slides for our viewers, and they'll help us explain where earthquakes come from, what causes them to generate in the first place, and where the most active fault lines are. So let's take a look at that first slide. First slide gives us the big picture driving forces behind earthquakes. We know that it involves plate tectonics. The Earth is separated into a series of plates which are moving along plate boundaries. And because they're moving along plate boundaries, we have a lot of activity. What causes that movement of those plates in the first place?
Well, the short answer is heat trying to escape the Earth. So the Earth has been cooling with time. The outer plates are the areas where it's more cooled materials that float around, and inside the Earth's really hot and the heat's trying to escape. And so what happens is cold stuff sinks, hot stuff rises, and it creates these what we call convection currents. And that creates this motion that can have these plates at the surface that drift around, and some parts sink and then some stuff rises and creates volcanoes or plates spreading.
Well, let's take a look at the next slide. The next slide shows us a nice view of the Earth, including the atmosphere. That top layer that's dark blue is the atmosphere. Then we have a lighter blue layer below it, which is the ocean. Right below the ocean is the crust. The crust is that thin green band, which actually on the left side of the screen takes a dog leg turn going southwest. And right next to that it says subduction. So what is subduction and how is it related to earthquakes?
So subduction is what we call when one tectonic plate dives under another one and sinks into the interior of the Earth. And at those spots, that's where two plates are colliding and grinding together, and that's where you get some of the largest earthquakes at that boundary as the plate's sinking and grinding underneath of the one over top of it.
So subduction is a key to this topic. And also when we talk about the transition zone, which was in that slide, the transition zone is that blue layer. What's in the transition zone and what's interesting about it?
So what's interesting is when you go to deeper depths inside the Earth, the pressures become really, really high. And the minerals in the rocks, they can go through transitions. So one of the minerals is olivine. It's a really pretty green mineral. And that itself can go through transitions where it's under higher pressures, it rearranges its crystal form to be a new version of the crystal. So same composition, but it rearranges the crystal. One example is diamonds, for instance. So diamonds are a more dense form of graphite, which is the material in your pencils.
Absolutely, and as we talk about density, let's take a look at the next slide. The next slide shows us what's referred to as the lithosphere as the top layer, and that's the hard rock layer that circles the Earth, and that's called the strong layer. And below it is called the asthenosphere, which is considered to be the weak layer. Why is the lithosphere the strong layer, and why is the underlying layer at the asthenosphere the weak layer?
So the lithosphere is the cooled outer shell around the Earth, and so since it's cooler, it's more brittle, as you can think of it as colder and stiffer, and it can break and crunch. The asthenosphere is more of a weak flowing layer, so the pressures are high there, the temperatures are really high. And we think of it more like, imagine silly putty, where it's a solid, but it kind of stretches out and flows with time, so it's more of the flow behavior. And so you have this
Elasticity.
Stiffer. Right. Yeah, there's elasticity, and viscosity is the other term that you refer to, that flowing behavior.
Right, so that allows for that movement of those plates. Absolutely. Okay, the next slide that we take a look at, similar to the last slide, this actually gives us some depth perception of how deep the lithosphere goes underground. And from the surface, this shows that the lithosphere, hard to say for somebody like me, ends at about 34 miles below the surface, and then the asthenosphere takes over from there. However, if we go inland into a continent, we see that as we go inland, the lithosphere actually goes much deeper, can go as deep as 124 miles from the surface. And why is that? Why does it go deeper inland as opposed to under the ocean?
So, well, continents are of different material than those ocean plates, and it's a much lighter material. So it has a lot more, for instance, quartz type rocks, and so it's less dense, it's lighter. The ocean plates are more very dense, volcanic, dark rock. You can kind of imagine it, so there's kind of a buoyancy on this asthenosphere. The plates are kind of floating on top, and the dense plates, you can imagine maybe more like a dense wood floating on water versus continents, maybe like a styrofoam. So you can get thicker sections that can hold up its weight on that same amount. And then the ocean plates are denser, so they ride lower, and that's why the oceans tend to sit on ocean plates, because they tend to sink lower and have space for that.
Okay, and speaking of the ocean, we've got another slide that we're going to take a look at right now. This slide shows the Bering Sea and the Northwest Pacific. This is probably off the coast of Alaska. And you see the various layers that we've been talking about. And then you see that orange arrow, which might be a little hard to read for the viewers, but that orange arrow coming up represents magma. The magma is the hot, molten material coming up, which ends up usually going into volcanic activity. And this would be part of what's called the Pacific Ring of Fire. First of all, why do we have magma and volcanic activity where we do, and why do we have a Pacific Ring of Fire?
Well, so we have, I mentioned that this process is subduction, where one plate dives under another. And what happens, the volcanism comes from, first of all, when the plate's diving under, usually the one plate diving under has the ocean on top of it. And so water gets into the cracks, into the tops of the plate going under. And that water, what's interesting is that it becomes minerals in that top of that plate, and when they get pushed down to about 60 miles deep, that's about the depth. The temperatures get really high, pressures get really high, and it makes those watery minerals come out into the rock and melt to create magma. And then that stuff, once it melts and becomes magma, it wants to preferentially come up to the surface and get squeezed out as volcanoes.
And we have the Pacific Ring of Fire that's related to this. Why do we have that?
Yeah, so then the Ring of Fire is what surrounds the Pacific, and we have a lot of these subduction zones where the plates are going under. And so anywhere where that plate goes under, and then when the top of that plate's at about 60 miles or so deep, you get these rings of volcanoes that surround. And then also the Ring of Fire, in general, it's a collision zone of the plates. So there's both volcanoes and also the earthquakes that are created all around there. So it's just a very active ring of activity tectonically.
All right, well, let's take a look at another map. This one is from the USGS, which represents the most hazardous areas for seismic activity. And you can see the red areas are the most hazardous. The Pacific West Coast along the ocean, the whole thing is red. But we also have some areas in other parts of the country, particularly in the Midwest, where we look at southeast Missouri, northeast Arkansas, western Tennessee. There's an area where you have some faults. The New Madrid fault line, I believe, is in that area. Can you monitor those areas from here in Southern California?
Yeah, we all across the U.S. we have sensors, we have seismometers that are measuring and tracking earthquakes that happen. And these days, the technology is so good that we can get information from those sensors all over nearly instantaneously. And so we can collect that data from any field stations or any of the locations where we analyze the seismic data.
All right, let's take a look at the next slide. The next slide shows us the San Andreas Fault. And the San Andreas Fault is famous. We've heard about it for many, many years. It runs the length of California. It goes all the way from Eureka along the coast, jogs inland about San Jose, and then heads down the rest of the way through an inland route through our San Bernardino Mountains, ends up at about the Salton Sea. What about the San Andreas Fault? Is it the most studied fault by the USGS, and what's unique about it?
Yeah, the San Andreas is very much the most studied. Part of it is because it's the longest fault on land. For us to be able to actually go to it. A lot of these subduction faults, for instance, are underwater. You can't go and study them. But San Andreas, it also cuts through a bunch of very high populated areas, and so it's of interest to know where these earthquakes are happening along it or when. It causes a whole bunch of side faults that jut off of it, so those are also kind of interest and related. And it's the fastest moving fault.
Okay, well, speaking of faults, the next slide shows us the San Andreas Fault. That's that long red line that you see in that image there. And we have two plates moving along a boundary. You have the North American plate moving south and the Pacific plate in the ocean moving north. There's some movement there. How much does it move every year?
So along the San Andreas, there's maybe about an inch or so, a little more than an inch per year of motion between those two, between the two sides. It's about the rate that fingernails grow.
Okay, so not moving a lot, but there is movement, to be sure. Okay, if we look at the next slide gives us an idea of the probability of a 6.7 magnitude earthquake within any given 30-year period. And we can see that the California faults that are in the red and orange and so on are with the highest probability. The one with the highest probability is the South San Andreas Fault, which is what we've just been talking about. That's here in Southern California. That has a 59% probability, 6 out of 10 chance within a 30-year range, you're going to get a 6.7 earthquake. How can we use probability and statistical analysis to forecast future activity? And we've only got about 30 seconds, so I'm going to have to ask you to make it quick.
Okay, well, it's really useful to study these faults and understand how often they've happened in the past and then come up with these possibilities for the future. And so, yeah, the southern San Andreas earthquake, for instance, we have a whole predicted result. We call it the shakeout scenario, which you might have heard about before. And that one's very useful for trying to prepare. It's our forecast one to help prepare in Southern California.
Okay, with that, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll finish this slideshow, which tells you everything you want to know about earthquakes in Southern California. And we also have a very nice videotape which will give you a sense of the types of movements that occur and how we feel those movements here on the surface. Stay with us.
Make a difference in our future by researching and helping to preserve our natural resources. The wide variety of careers in this field will have a huge impact on our lives while using the principles of engineering, chemistry, and biology to help find solutions to environmental problems. You could be a part of this exciting field with a degree from Cal State Long Beach.
Welcome back to Talking Points. I'm Dave Kelly. My guest today is Dr. Aaron Burkett. We're talking about earthquakes. And Aaron, before we went to the break, we were talking about the probability of earthquakes in Southern California with the San Andreas Fault being of major concern to us. We've got another graphic we want to take a look at right here, which shows the hot spots, what I call the hot spots. I know that's not the geologically correct term, but I use it all the time. Concentrations, clusters of earth movement over the last 30 years or so. This tells us where we're likely to find earthquake activity, and that being the case, is there any real mystery about where the big one will occur or the big ones in the future will occur since we have this history?
There's really not that much of a mystery of where the big ones could happen. This kind of Seismicity, so it comes from the monitoring we have out there, and it's for maybe the last couple decades. But there's even more information we get from digging into faults, and so we can get a much longer history too. And with those two together, we can figure out, in general, where we think the major faults are that could cause big earthquakes to be worried about.
Okay, and on the next slide that we've got here, this is from the Southern California Earthquake Center. This gives us an idea of, if we're looking over the time span of a century, the previous slide we looked at was 30 years, but this is over the time span of a century. We can see that the red spots, again, are the hot spots. Those mean that within a century, probably 5 times or more, you could have an earthquake that has movement exceeding 20% the force of gravity. And that's important because 20% the force of gravity is where damage starts to occur, major damage starts to occur to some of the older buildings. So if we talk about 20% the force of gravity, what are we talking about in terms of intensity?
Well, this kind of shaking map can come from a bunch of different earthquakes that could happen in different locations. So it's telling you what the shaking could be from any one of earthquakes. And the magnitude of those earthquakes could be a smaller magnitude underneath the ground that causes this kind of shaking, still feelable amount, or it could be a much bigger earthquake, but it could be much farther away, and the same magnitude could be causing shaking underneath your feet that could be up to that much.
Okay, let's go to the next slide, because the next slide shows us the major fault lines here in Southern California. If we start at the upper right part of the screen, we see the San Andreas Fault. We've been talking about that a lot. There's the San Jacinto Fault, which goes through Hemet, then the Elsinore Fault, which is obviously in the Lake Elsinore area. And then we see the Rose Canyon Fault, which has a blue arrow pointing to it. And that's significant to us here in Long Beach because that's the underwater extension of the so-called Newport-Inglewood Fault, which runs right under Long Beach and was responsible for the 1933 earthquake, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But in any event, we see these fault lines and the number of fault lines in Southern California. Is any place especially safe, or should we assume that everyone is vulnerable?
We should pretty much assume that everyone is vulnerable. This kind of map shows you that there are a number of faults, and if big enough earthquakes happen, even if it's farther away from you, it could still cause shaking in your location. So the real take-home would be to try to be ready all the time. It's a reminder that we live in earthquake country. We could have earthquakes at any time from any number of these faults, and it's good to be ready.
Okay, and on that topic, our next slide shows an example of earthquake monitoring. And the earthquake monitoring is a system that's set up around Southern California here. Explain how it works.
Well, so when an earthquake happens, it has 2 different waves that it creates, first of all. The first one's not actually very damaging. And so we use that first earthquake, or first wave, we call it the P wave, primary wave, and it hits our sensors. We have a whole bunch of sensors all throughout the landscape. And so that first wave can hit and it can send information even ahead of shaking from an earthquake.
Well, let's go to the next slide, because the next slide talks about the early warning system, which is part of this, and this is actually called the shake alert. What is the shake alert and how much warning does it give us?
So the shake alert is a system we're currently having for development to have on the west coast of the United States, and it's this earthquake early warning system. So it takes advantage of the fact that our sensors can sense that an earthquake has happened and then send signals ahead of the shaking. So you could basically receive an alert where you are that shaking from an earthquake is coming your way. And so Shake Alert is the system that's in development. Hopefully in the next couple of years it could start to be released to the public.
Okay, well that's the end of our slideshow, but we still have more audiovisual materials. This one is a videotape, and this particular videotape is going to show us what happens when an earthquake occurs in terms of the movement underground, and how does that movement then translate to the kind of movement we feel here on the surface. So let's go ahead and roll that videotape.
When the stress reaches the breaking point on a fault, a rupture begins at the hypocenter and continues to break along the fault surface. The epicenter is the geographic location at the surface of the Earth, directly above the hypocenter. To grasp what causes the ground to shake, we need to understand the propagation of seismic waves. Just as throwing a rock into a pond causes radiating ripples, Rupturing of a fault in an earthquake causes a transmission of energy in the form of seismic waves, traveling away from the hypocenter and epicenter. Earthquakes produce many types of seismic waves. Body waves travel through the Earth, and surface waves travel along the Earth's surface. It is the arrival of seismic waves that people feel when they experience shaking in an earthquake. Body waves can be broadly classified in two categories. The P wave, or primary wave, is a compressional body wave that alternately compresses and expands the particles that it moves through within the Earth. P waves can pass through any medium, and so travel through every layer of the Earth, and even the air, like sound waves. The S wave, or secondary wave, is a body wave that travels through the interior of the Earth with a shearing motion. S waves cannot travel through liquids, including the Earth's liquid outer core. There are likewise two kinds of surface waves. Rayleigh waves have energy that causes the ground to roll up and down, like water waves on the ocean. Love waves move the ground from side to side and are similar to shear waves, but can have larger amplitudes. Seismic waves carry the energy from the earthquake source to the surface where people can feel the shaking.
It's interesting to see how the different kinds of waves affect Earth movement in different ways. Aaron, if we talk about historic earthquakes, the one I mentioned a moment ago was the Long Beach earthquake of 1933. And that one was important because it destroyed a lot of school buildings, which were fortunately unoccupied because it happened at almost 6 p.m. when schools were empty. But had there been students in school, it would have been a major disaster. As it was, the earthquake around Southern California did manage to be responsible for about 115 deaths, which is significant in and of itself. But specifically because of the damage to schools, the state legislature took action and passed what was called the Field Act. And what was the Field Act, and what did it do in terms of school construction?
Well, so the Field Act was in response mainly to the schools being damaged, and so it looked into how to better retrofit the buildings later, learn from the lessons from that, because the problem basically with the buildings for that was what we call unreinforced masonry. And so it means basically the cinder blocks that are not braced. And those things, the mortar is really weak, and so anything that's bricks or concretes, in the shaking, it doesn't hold up and it essentially becomes a pile of bricks. So that was the lesson learned, and the Field Act addressed that for later building of construction that could prevent that from happening again.
Right, so you have that lateral movement which tends to tear those bricks apart, as you said, and so now we have reinforced concrete, reinforced masonry, we have rebar, and all of those sorts of things that you hear about when people talk about earthquake retrofitting. Also, as part of that, the Field Act applied to new school construction, and then people said, well, what about the existing schools? Those are the ones that need it the most right now. So they then passed the Garrison Act in 1939 to supplement the Field Act to deal with existing schools. And since then, we've had much, much better luck with schools during earthquake and seismic activity. Another earthquake that was significant much more recently was the 1994 Northridge earthquake. That was a big one, a 6.7 magnitude, 60 people were killed, 7,000 were injured, and about 20,000 left homeless. And 40,000 buildings were damaged in what the 4 or 5 county area around LA. What were some lessons that we learned from that earthquake?
So one lesson actually on the scientific side from that was that it happened on a fault that was previously unrecognized. So it was a surprise earthquake on a fault that hadn't been on the maps yet. And so that was one lesson from the scientific side of realizing that still damaging earthquakes can happen on unrecognized faults. So it's, again, good to be ready wherever you are since we're in an earthquake region. Lesson building-wise, one of the lessons from that was there was an apartment complex that collapsed its first story. And so there's what we call soft first story, which refers to when there's an apartment complex with a living space above and then maybe a structurally weak layer where there's parking underneath, and so it's not held up as well. And so that revealed the weaknesses of soft first story, and there's still some work to be done on addressing that in the coming years, but that was one of the main lessons, was realizing that type of building type is the next one to be fixed.
And we've talked about the fact that because the Northridge earthquake happened in 1994, this was pre-internet. Most of us weren't using email and the World Wide Web in 1994. That came a couple years later. So that being the case, we don't know what will happen to our internet communication system when we have the next big one.
Yep, yeah, that's another one of the lessons is, since then at least, one new modern thing we're going to have to do is really look at our modern infrastructure and how much more complicated things are, and relying on internet. There's so many things these days that if internet goes down, other things don't function. Or we rely on internet to bring in supplies daily, for instance, that coordination, that
Logistical supply and
logistical
support.
stuff that now relies on the internet, but if you don't have the internet, that can cause lots of problems in those interconnections between those systems.
And I know that the USGS recently announced a working relationship with the LA Mayor's Office on a project. What's in that project?
So, yeah, so this was a collaboration between Lucy Jones, who is the lead of our group at the group that I work with the USGS. And so she was tasked with being the science advisor for seismic safety with the mayor of LA. And so they worked together. She provided the science behind the possible big one. So used this shakeout scenario earthquake and looked at the science behind what could happen in the next big earthquake in Southern California. And then he took that, the mayor helped turn that into a report to have a plan now for some retrofitting laws, some plans and task force to address maybe water system vulnerabilities, telecommunications, so this new aspect. So there's plans in place now, and then also addressing some of the buildings that were built before the laws currently. So that will be another thing addressed, is trying to retrofit software story, try to retrofit some of the other buildings that might have been built before the newer laws came out.
Well, we've run out of time. But it's been great having you here today, and I'm sure our audience has learned a lot about what earthquakes are, where they come from, where the major fault lines are, and this will be a great benefit to them. So thanks again, and good luck in your future efforts.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us for today's episode of Talking Points. Join us again soon for the next episode. Until then, I'm Dave Kelly. Have a nice day.